Birth of the Catwoman. Gotham City, New Jersey, early February 2000. It was a cold, bitter northern winter up in Gotham City. But the bitter February cold was not keeping people away from one of the biggest fashion shows in Gotham City, namely the annual Daggett clothing line, where he shows the latest fashions for spring, summer, autumn, and winter. He holds it every year at the Ritz-Carlton in their luxurious ballroom. Everyone who was a somebody was there in attendance, including a young 18-year-old Bruce Wayne. Well, in the back room, all the models were getting ready. One model in particular, a young model by the name of Selina Kyle. She was a beautiful, attractive brunette with sky blue eyes. She was 21, and she wanted to be a fashion designer and a model. But right now she was focusing on modeling. She had moved to Gotham not too long ago and got into the fashion circuit there. She has posed in many magazine covers. Back in '98, she was in a rock video. And just in December past, she was the Snow Queen for the annual lighting of the Christmas tree in Gotham City. But now she was going to be a runway model at the Daggett fashion show. As she was getting ready, she was going to be Miss Summer, showing off the lines that were going to go for sale very soon at the Daggett department stores. She was ready, and she waited her turn, as the new Miss Winters was going up in the runway showing the new winter fashions. Then came spring, and then she gets a signal, "Miss Kyle, it's your turn." Then Selina runs up and goes out to the runway showing off the new fashion for summer, as everybody were snapping photographs of her and commenting to themselves. She caught the eye of two men that night at the fashion show. That of young Bruce Wayne and that of the owner of Daggett department stores and several other clothing stores in and around the tri-state area, Roland Daggett. As she goes back to the back of the dressing room, she changes from the clothing she was modeling in to her nice, beautiful cocktail dress. After the show was over, she goes out to the ballroom and mixes and mingles with everybody who was there. Everyone asked her a million questions. During the course of socializing, she eventually is approached by Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne says to her, "Wait a minute, I think I've seen you somewhere. Didn't I see you in some music video?" Selina says yes, as she lets out a chuckle, and she named the music video and the band that played it. And then she says to Bruce Wayne, "Oh, I've seen you too. You're Bruce Wayne, Gotham's favorite son. So how are you doing?" she asks Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne says, "I'm fine. And how about you?" She says, "I'm doing fine." And then she says to Bruce Wayne, "What are you drinking?" Bruce Wayne says, "Oh, this is just orange juice. Still kind of underaged," he says. And then Bruce Wayne asks her out, and then she was like, "Oh, Bruce, I am very flattered." And she says, "You are attractive and everything, but you're too young for me," she says. "I need a guy who could buy me a drink at least." Bruce Wayne just shrugs it up and says, "Okay." And then he wishes her luck and walks off. Within moments, he was talking to another of the models from the runway, and it looked like he was having success with her. Well, eventually, Roland Daggett comes up to Selina, and he says to her, "I enjoyed the work that you did up there during the show." Selina turns around, and she says, "Oh my goodness, Roland Daggett." And then Daggett says, "Yes, I'm glad you know me, but who are you?" he asked her. She says, "My name is Selina Kyle. I'm, as you can see, a model, and I've been with your company for 3 weeks modeling." He says to her, "Wow, excellent. I could see my hiring agent has good taste in women." And then the two of them began talking and getting a bit more intimate with certain details. Then he asks her, "Miss Kyle, why don't you come to my office tomorrow afternoon, say around 6? I want to talk to you some more. I could help further your career. He lets out a smile. Selena lets out a smile and says, I'll be there, sir. And then he says to her, excellent. And don't call me Mr. Daggett. You can call me Roland. He lets out a smile. And then someone comes up to Roland Daggett and whispers in his ear. And he says, excuse me, I have to go. And then he leaves the party. Well, the next afternoon, the sun was setting. And Selena goes to Daggett Department Store's main branch and goes up to the corporate offices. There, she knocks on the door. The door opens up. It was Roland Daggett answering the door. He was wearing his very nice business suit, and he says, Ah, Selena Kyle, come in, come in. I've been expecting you. And then he shuts the door behind her. Selena looks at the office. It was a nice office, but there was also lit candles and a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. She was suspicious of his invitation. This was not the first time she had to deal with these kinds of situations, but she knew how to deal with these kinds of situations. She was a woman of integrity. Yes, she's dated a lot of men, but she would never sell herself sexually to get to the top. No, she was a honest girl and a hard-working girl. She rather struggled to get to the top than just lay down and be taken advantage of. That was not Selena. Well, she sits down, and Roland sits in the chair across from her, and he says to her, Well, Selena, I can help you. I can help you get to the top. Just say what you want, I can give it to you. And you want to be a fashion designer eventually, I have friends in the fashion industry that could help you get your own clothing line started. And if you want, I can help you become a supermodel. You could become the next Cindy Crawford, he says to her. Selena says, Well, I like the offer that you're offering me, she says, but I have a bad feeling about what this offer is going to lead to, she says to Roland Daggett. Daggett lets out a smile, and he says, Come on, let's just drink and relax. Then he pops the cork, and he pours the wine into the glasses. They were soon drinking and talking some more. Selena was trying to steer the conversation away from what she was suspecting, while Daggett was going to make perfectly clear very soon what he wanted. And she was waiting for the certain key words, and she heard them. And he says to her, Well, Miss Kyle, let's just say I can help you to the top, but I'm going to expect some payment in return. Then Selena says, Alright, Roland, just listen to me and listen to me good. I'm not some whore that you could buy with the promise of a lucrative career and her own clothing line. Roland Daggett says, Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm sorry, Selena. I'm very sorry. I like that in a woman who doesn't sell herself easy. And then he says, Forgive me, Miss Kyle. Forgive me terribly. Well, let's just forget about the whole incident, and the offer still stands without the other part, and let's just drink a little bit more. Then he refills her wine glass. Unbeknownst to her, he slipped some sort of tablet into the wine glass, and it was quickly dissolving as he was pouring the wine in. Then he gave it back to her. Then he poured himself another round, and they soon began drinking some more. And within moments, Selena began feeling weird. She was feeling like she was going to puke. The room began spinning. She quickly realized what happened to her. And then Roland went on top of her, trying to force himself on her. She fought hard. She took self-defense classes when she was younger, but she was under the influence of something. She couldn't think straight. She couldn't see straight. Her balance was very off, but she fought. She had an adrenaline rush that was aiding her. And Roland was saying to her, Listen to me. No one says no to Roland Daggett. I always get what I want. And then the two fought and struggled as Selena was trying to free herself. She was able to break free when she kneed Daggett in the groin. Daggett lets out a And then she runs, but under the influence, she trips over the foot of the table, and Roland quickly lunges on top of her, and the two struggle some more. Finally, she broke free, but she got herself cornered, and Roland grabbed her and threw her out the window. She was falling what felt like an eternity. She eventually started crashing through the cloth awnings on her way down when she finally hit the ground with a loud thud. She now lay on a snowy backlot, her body racked with pain, as she was probably figuring she broke everything. There was pain surging up her back. Her head felt like it was split. She couldn't move her legs at all. She couldn't move her arms. As she was dying, many thoughts raced through her mind. Her parents, her brother, but the most important thing of all, her little kitty cat, Bast, a beautiful black cat that she adopted not too long ago. What was going to become of her? Then, as she was starting to slip out of consciousness, possibly slipping into death, she could hear the crashing of trash cans coming from a nearby alley. Seconds later, it was her cat Bast, or an alley cat that looked like her cat, looking over her as she was dying, and the cat let out a meow. Well, the cat was not alone. There was a huge group of alley cats that accompanied it. They were surrounding and walking all over Selena's as she was dying. And then they began to gnaw on her fingers, and the other one began gnawing on her legs and gnawing on other parts of her body. She didn't know what was going on as she was starting to lose consciousness, but she felt weird. Was it the drugs? Was it the effect of dying? Was it the injury? Was it all the above? But soon this weird feeling began turning even weirder. The pain was going away. It felt like her body was healing. She could still feel the cats gnawing on her. All of a sudden, it was over. She was not dead. She was still alive. But the pain was gone, even though she had painful bite marks on her from where the cats had bit and gnawed on her. But that soon was going away. She was regaining feeling in her legs and her arms. She began to slowly get up from the ground. She grabs her cat Bast and walks, almost zombie-like, her mind a blur. She couldn't understand what was going on. She was instinctively just walking home with her cat in her arms. It was almost like a dream, a daze. Did she die, go to heaven, or did she go to hell? Or was this all real? That a cat somehow, some way saved her with some sort of mystic ability that they have? Well, she makes it home to her nice apartment that was a little costly. She drops Bast. The rest of the cats were outside on the ledge, looking inside, meowing, almost like they were seeing if she was okay. She screams, "Honey, I'm home." Then she remembers and says, "Oh wait, I'm not married." Then she goes over to her bedroom and she falls on top of her bed and she loses consciousness. As she lost consciousness, she began to have vivid and wild nightmares, almost like a drug trip of sorts. But the nightmare included with a demonic Roland Daggett attacking her, laughing maniacally. Then she wakes up screaming. As she wakes up screaming, she realizes what happened to her. And then she snaps and begins trashing her apartment, screaming. As she was doing that, she was pulling everything out of her closet, out of boxes, fabric swatches, clothings, and everything, since she was working on clothing designs on what little free time she had. And she began using the sewing machine, sewing a leather cat suit that she had from a modeling shoot not too long ago. She eventually took pins and needles and did a little welding with a lighter until she made claws out of them. And then she made a cat-shaped mask, and she found an old leather bullwhip that was used for who knows what. Then she was finished making her costume, and she puts it on. She was cladded head to toe in black leather, and she wrapped the whip around the thigh of her leg. And she says to her black cat Bast, who was standing on the bed looking at her as she was looking in the mirror, "Oh, Miss Kitty, I feel so liberated," she says. Later on that night, in some crowded streets of Gotham City, a young woman was walking, bundled up, protected from the cold. But nothing was going to prepare her for what she was going to see tonight. As she walks by one alleyway, suddenly, a hand reaches out and grabs her, pulls her right into the alleyway, and it was a mugger. The mugger says, "All right, lady, don't scream," as he had a knife pointed to her throat. Suddenly, the mugger and the woman pinned to the wall hear a voice coming from not too far off where they were at saying, "Oh, my. So, this is how it is. A big, strong man like you trying to push a young woman around like that." And the mugger says, "What the?" And he turns his head around and he sees a figure coming down the alley. The figure was none other than Catwoman. And the mugger says, "You gotta be kidding me. What the hell is this? Halloween come to town early? Come on." The mugger says to Catwoman, "I'm not afraid of you," as he turns his attention to Catwoman. Catwoman says, "Oh, be gentle on me. It's my first time." The mugger comes at her with a knife, and Catwoman quickly disarms him and lays on the punches and kicks to him. Then she proceeds to take her right hand and unsheath her claws. Then she proceeds to slash the face of the surprised mugger 2 times, followed by a slash in the throat, causing him to bleed to death. The mugger falls down dead, clutching his throat. And then the woman says, "Oh, thank you. And then Catwoman pins her to the wall and says to her angrily, "Oh, you make it so easy, playing the damsel in distress, waiting for some Batman to save you. Women like you give us a bad name. You should learn to fight back." Then the young woman says, with a bit of fear in her voice, Who are you?" The Catwoman answers back to her with a bit of an angry tone, saying to her, "I'm Catwoman. Hear me roar." Then Catwoman lets her go and backflips into the dark alleyway, disappearing. The young woman runs off in terror, screaming, "I knew I should have moved out of this godforsaken city." The next night, at a Daggett department store somewhere in downtown Gotham City, it was night. It was closed, and Catwoman looks in the window. She breaks into the department store and begins to have fun. She goes up to 2 mannequins and breaks out a whip that was wrapped around her right leg. And then she goes on with one big swipe of the whip to take out both mannequins' head. Afterwards, she goes around the store and begins using the whip and starts walking, jump roping at the same time. And then she goes to some displays and trashes them. And then she goes to the beauty department and makes a mess there. As she was doing that, 2 security guards come up. They were shocked. They see a woman in a leather cat costume. The one guard tells his buddy, "I don't know, to draw my gun or make love to her." Then Catwoman notices them, and she threatens them, and she says, "Get out of here." The other guard says to her, "Okay, lady, we're going to give you your final warning, or else we're going to draw our guns on you." And then she says, "Go away, you're overpaid," and she proceeds to whip their hats off. Their hats go flying off their heads. Then they draw their guns, and then she proceeds to whip their hands, causing them to drop their gun. The 2 guards ran away in terror. Then she grabs several cans of hairspray and walks over to the house appliances and then puts them in the microwave, and she sets the microwave to the maximum setting and puts it on the maximum time. And then she goes over to a wall where there was a panel for the gas. She rips open the panel and rips the gas hose, and she can hear the hiss of the gas. Of course, the two guards call the police. And as soon as they called the police, the call went out over the police band about the break-in at the department store, and Batman hears it on his police band. Then he drives over to the Daggett department store, gets out, and then makes his way to the front entrance of the store. As he was approaching the front entrance to the store, he sees a feminine figure flipping towards him, leaving the store. She stops, looks at Batman, and she says, "Meow," and then there was a huge explosion. Batman uses his cape to shield himself from the explosion and the debris. As soon as it was over, he gets back up and looks around, and he sees the Catwoman climbing up a building wall very quickly. Batman knew he had to catch up to her, so he ran to a nearby building, pulls out his new grappling gun, and shoots it, and then reels up. Batman finally gets onto the roof. As he was getting onto the roof, Catwoman was already there waiting for him, swinging the handle of her whip gently. Finally, as Batman was climbing up the ladder to a higher level, Catwoman kicks him. Batman falls to the lower levels and lands on his back. As he was quickly getting up, Catwoman already jumps down and lays a few punches and kicks on him. But Batman, kneeling on the ground, was able to surprise her with one kick to her gut. She says to Batman, "How could you? I'm a woman." Suddenly, Batman says,
I'm sorry."
Seizing that moment of distraction, she then hits Batman again with several punches and kicks, and then she finally breaks out her whip and starts snapping her whip at Batman. Batman, backing up to avoid getting hit, falls off the roof, but Catwoman's whip wraps around his left arm, and she uses the aid of a TV aerial to help support Batman, holding him up, as Batman was dangling like a worm on the hook. And then she says, "That's right, I'm a woman and can't be taken for granted. Life's a bitch and so am I." As she was giving her speech, Batman uses his free right hand to reach in for his utility belt and pulls out some sort of glass tube that had neon blue glowing chemicals inside. Then he shakes it and flings it up into the air. The tube shatters against a chimney that was next to Catwoman, and the chemical splashes on her shoulder. The chemical starts eating into her suit. She lets go of the whip, causing Batman to fall, but Batman was able to get on a ledge that was beneath him, as Catwoman, like a cat, jumps and ends up falling off the roof. She falls off to a lower level and tries to scratch her way to safety, but Batman quickly pulls her up to the ledge that he was standing on. Catwoman says to Batman, "Oh, thank you." And then she takes a good look at Batman, and she says, "So, Batman, you do exist." And then she says to Batman, "Who is the man behind the bat? And can he find the woman behind the cat?" And then she starts feeling on Batman's chest. She can clearly feel that the bat suit was not normal cloth. As she was feeling down his torso, she says, "No, that's not you." Then she moves towards the side of his stomach. "No, that's not you." And then on his left side, she says, "I found you." And then with her claws, she jams one of her claws into the side of Batman's side. Batman quickly lets out a shrill scream.
Ah!
Then Batman backhands her violently. The hit causes Catwoman to fall off the ledge to what looked like her doom. As she was about to hit the ground, all of a sudden, a passing sand truck saves her as she lands in the back of it. But it was not hauling sand, it was hauling kitty litter. As she surfaces from the kitty litter that saved her, she looks at it and says with the irony in her voice, "Saved by kitty litter." She looks at her missing claw, and she looks at the torn left shoulder of her cat suit, and she says, "Damn." Batman looks as the truck drives away. He had a feeling that this was not going to be the last time he saw her. Later on, in the Batcave, Batman was tending to his wounds as he was pulling out the claw from his side. And then he goes for the first aid and treats the wound. After he gets out of the bat suit, he sits down in front of the bat computer and looks at the Catwoman's claw, and Bruce Wayne says, "Meow." Like and subscribe. The end.